Klaatu, what's talking? And welcome everybody to another episode of the Lunch Table Podcast. And in this video, we're going to give you our review for Invincible, episode 4. It ended, so now we have to wait till part 2, unfortunately. Part 1 was such a blast. We will do a part 1 review a little bit later down the line. But as for this episode, pretty great episode. I cannot wait to get into it. Dylan, without further ado, start us off.
I feel like I need therapy after this.
Family
holy
therapy.
shit, man! What a depressing ass episode. I feel like I need couples therapy or something. But yeah, I loved it. Honestly, they set the mood so well. I thought it was gonna linger a little bit too much with the depressing shit, but actually it was a nice balance because we had some cool fights in between, and we saw other character points of view in this episode, which I really like, which we'll talk about in a minute. Yeah, so let's just get right into it. Mark finally sees his dad, right? After we saw the last episode, and I thought that reunion was perfectly done. To be honest, like I said, I haven't read the comics, but I thought their interaction, it was like they didn't have time to really reconnect and like linger on the past. It was like, oh, we just have to like be in the moment and just like deal with it, and then we'll probably settle our differences later. But I thought it was beautiful, and I love Nolan's little background like story in the beginning, and how it was like kind of a parallel to Debbie, right? Because they both had like this voyage while kind of, it seemed like they were kind of flirting with like suicidal thoughts in a way. So I thought that was just like an interesting parallel, but let's get your thoughts.
A perfect point, exactly. And I always like how when they bring up these heavy subjects, sometimes if you have the will to go past it, it unlocks new opportunities. And for Nolan, we'll see more of him a little bit later on. That's what I will say. And I know that he has a lot to make up for. And he's the type of character now where, you know, you kind of feel good to see him suffer. So I'll just say that. But in a way, there's a way to have redemption in the future. And so we're just seeing that, especially with the end of this episode. Mark, it's a really tough situation for him as well, because at the end of the day, that's his dad that committed these horrible atrocities. But he's thrown into a situation where he has to mature really quickly. And I think that just makes him a better superhero a little bit later on. So that's why I think like Mark's one of my favorite protagonists from like an animated show. He's just like one of my favorite superheroes as well. He's just really awesome, and he has a lot to learn. We also get a little bit of Adam Eve. There was this thing that they were trying to do, which wasn't really in the comics, but she basically saved her own parents after a fight with, I forgot his name, was like Fistball or some shit like that, which did not happen in the comics as well. What did you think of that? Because she's still coming back from the fact that she endangered people and led to certain deaths. What did you think about her scenes?
I like that we come back to her every now and then, because I love the first episode where we explored her origin story. So I like that they keep coming back to her in between these breathing moments, and kind of like her trying to find her place, right? Trying to become a hero, but also do things for people, right? So that was her parents in the car?
Yeah.
Okay, I kept thinking they looked like them too. Yeah, I thought that was actually interesting, because there's only like few superheroes I know that like directly affect, because I don't know if in the comics if they were going to die or not, because once the car fell, I thought, oh shit, where were they going to die? But I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be fucked up if like she directly affected her own parents' death in a way and she felt guilty about it? And it's funny because like she's usually a very coordinated superhero, so to see her in this episode kind of like get a little too cocky, and she kind of like messed up in a way. And that kind of like added to her guilt in a way and then she moved back with her parents, right? At the end.
Well, actually, now that you bring that up, I mean, it could seem, I think that's a little too convenient, though, if it did seem like that was her parents, but it wasn't. So I'm taking it for right now as it were, unless we see later on that it wasn't. Because definitely she was met by her father when she went back. And yeah, she keeps going back there. I don't really like her situation in the comics, too, because she keeps going back to her parents' house and just stays in the room. But she always dips. It's like she doesn't really have a home. And which is funny because that's what's so great about her character, why it's so complex, because she could literally create a home using just her hands, but she never really has one.
I kept thinking too. I was like, why? I'm overthinking, but like, she controls molecules. Why didn't she just like take the water out of their lungs if they were drowning, or put like oxygen into the lungs? I was like, yeah, like why are you waiting? Why are you waiting for the ambulance people to do some shit? Like, you can literally control atoms too.
Oh, she can affect organic matter. And I think because it's in their body, that's why. Because remember from the Adam Eve special, the scientist he brought that point that what she brought up was a good point. But yeah, I think she has her limitations only, with physical stuff. But I'm not going to spoil much, but it comes a little later on about organic stuff, and I think it's so beautiful. Like, her character is really beautifully written, where she doesn't really create a home with her own hands, and she can't really affect organic matter, but there's like a poetic type of thing that comes later down her life that I think is so beautiful. And I'm definitely not gonna spoil that, though. I can't wait for people to see that.
Well, yeah, I love her story. I can't wait to see where that goes. But also, what did you think of Donald in this episode? Because he had kind of like a prominent subplot. I'm sure since you're into the comics, but why don't you give us a taste for our viewers?
Yeah,
what we'll expect.
So Donald in the comic books wasn't really a huge part. He did have similar screen time as like in the comics, which isn't screen time. It's just like different panels and stuff like that. But it wasn't something that really went into his backstory as much. And I think they're giving him the same time that they tried to give with Debbie. And I kind of like that because you're fleshing out these characters to seem and appear more human, which the Invincible comics already do a great job in. Yeah, there's something fishy going on a little bit beneath the surface, and I think it may lead into a certain arc where Cecil has something cooking. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say about that. But that's why they got him in there, discovering things along the way. So.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. I love that they juggle between different characters, and it's not all about Mark. I like that. The beauty of Invincible is that this world building feels so lived in, and there's so many interesting characters and so many interesting points of view, kind of like Scott Pilgrim we just reviewed recently.
Yeah.
So there's a plethora of characters that you can explore in this world, which I love. So let's just get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. So Mark and Nolan. Well, first of all, the big reveal was that Nolan has a wife and kid from the Thraxan people. I thought that man didn't waste any time. Holy shit.
And a planet where you can't really waste time, too. Right, so it's interesting.
Yeah, that's the irony of it, too. I thought that's so ironic. But yeah, that was a shocker for me. And then to see I almost said the Brittle brothers, the Viltrumites come to the planet, and then they had that big tussle. I thought that was so cool. I love the action. I love how bloodier each episode gets with the fights. Let me get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so Mark's half-brother will play an important role a little bit later on, because we ended the episode where no one's really safe on that planet anymore except the wife and the child and Mark. So definitely that child will be a bigger part, and I wonder how certain families will interact with each other. That's all I'm going to say about that. But the fight itself, I believe in the comics there was a lot more people. They kind of alluded to that here, but in the comics it was a lot more fleshed out. It was like a really long battle. And yeah, there was a lot of chaos, and in the aftermath of that was majority of the people, the civilians are deceased now. And that's a good lesson for Nolan as well. So you see, Nolan is going through a lot of torture because he was bred and born into that society where they're conquerors and they believe that everybody else is just nothing really. It's like the Equalizer. You're nothing but lint or a bottle cap.
Right.
So he's going to learn, you know. First we'll break your mind, then your body or whatever, your body, then your mind. So and that's the treatment that he has to have in order to be a better superhero. Yeah, that whole civilization, they age in 1 year, and I think it's a unique concept. It's a sort of beautiful concept because they have a different outlook on life and a lot of things, and that's passed to Mark. He gains a perspective from that, especially with his brother. He's going to gain even more perspective. So you see, everything that happens to you in life teaches you a certain valuable lesson that you should take. And that's why I love how Invincible is set up that way, where you think a lot of things will just pass by because all the fighting and all the glamour, but really it's all just to make these people better human beings rather than superheroes. And by doing that, then you could become an awesome superhero. So it was really destructive. What did you think of the action in that scene? I thought it was great.
Well, the great point that you said, I keep thinking too, it's like almost a foil because in a way, Nolan kind of adopted human traits. He's still kind of ruthless, but he's still empathetic in a way. You can see that in this episode, how much he changed from his experience on Earth. And he still has this love for Mark and he protects him like, you know, well, he is his son, right? So he kind of like still has that fatherly instinct, right? That he has to put over his Viltrumite heritage. And in a way, it was funny because he's teaching Mark how to become less human and more like a Viltrumite. So I think it's interesting how they're shifting in different directions. But that whole fight was beautifully done. I thought it was so cool, like choreographed. It almost reminds me of Dragon Ball Z in a way because Nolan is kind of like a Vegeta character where like he comes from this very like warrior society and then he kind of has to adopt this different lifestyle, right? And becomes like more of a father figure. So I think it's so interesting the parallels I see with DBZ. Yeah, what did you think also of the big baddie reveal at the end? Because I'm sure you're just boiling right now to give spoiler.
I'm like an anime character who's like or whatever. Exactly. Yeah, so that's just one of them. Mark will have a lot of other Viltrumite supervillains to fight. So this is stage 1 or round 1. I can't wait into, I'll just say there's a really big bad that comes into play that absolutely, that will be like Man of Steel type of levels of a fight. So I was surprised that they didn't show that yet. But as for this guy, yeah, he'll give Mark some trouble down the line, but I don't think he's the only big bad that we may see in this season. And as we saw from the original trailer, they have a huge cast list. So I think they're going to just try to go balls to the walls with this, and they're going to try to introduce a lot of other different villains.
I got to read the fucking Silmarillion to understand.
They have to read it.
Like these characters.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, he's a great tactician, but he serves a man, and that man we will see a little bit later down the line. I wonder if they're going to introduce him in this season just as a taste, kind of like a Thanos big bad threat, because that's really... After that guy, I mean, that's when the comics really change and they become about something else, more about life rather than action. And so that's where it kind of slows down. But we have a ways to go for that. We do have another big bad that will come to play. Probably, I don't know if they're going to introduce it in this season. And then maybe next season, you got to deal with him. But for the most part, this guy should be suitable. He'll definitely spank Mark and teach him some lessons along the way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you heard it here from our expert. So overall, I think we set our points. How would you rate this episode?
Yeah, I absolutely love this episode. I think I'm going to give this episode a 9 out of 10 for me.
For sure. Yeah, I would give it 9 out of 10 as well. I think everything was really beautiful on screen, and then every little detail worked, and of course the music was just phenomenal throughout the whole episode. I think it was a great cliffhanger for part 1 of this show, and I can't wait to see where the rest of it goes. But why don't you take us away, Akram?
Yeah, so if you guys made it to the end of this video, please drop a like. We greatly appreciate your patronage. We have, as I said before, a part 1 review coming your way, and 2024 is around the corner, so we will have Part 2, and you best believe we're definitely going to be reviewing that, and it's going to be our Season 6, so that's really fun. If you guys are new to the channel, we have plenty of other reviews. Check it out. We have a lot of content coming your way. Again, December is coming, so yeah, it's going to be really fun. Baby. Yes, I cannot wait for that as well. But as always, thank you so much. Dylan, do your thing.
Well, guys, thank you so much. Stick around, sub to the channel if you enjoy our content and like this video. Let us know what you thought of this episode. But until then, guys, thanks for having lunch with us.
See you guys.